if you don't have a notch or something for your sample, you're gonna wanna mark where you're gonna wanna end that, because kind of like what we did on the skirt, we're gonna baste where that zipper is gonna go, because we wanna mark where it's going to be in terms of the seam, but we don't wanna sew it shut. So I've marked where I want my zipper, the actual application of my zipper to end right here. You can go all the way to the stopper, but if you do a sample that's not very long, I want you to make sure that you actually do sew this shut somehow. So I'm gonna start at the end here, and I'm gonna do my 2.5 stitch length. And where that mark is, I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm gonna go up and go ahead to do my number 5 all the way to the end. And make sure that this is a real 1/2 inch, because if you're shy, you're going to end up not having very much seam allowance to work with installing your zipper, and your zipper is really attached mostly to the seam allowance. Eventually it gets top stitched to your garment, but not always. So your seam allowance is important here. That doesn't mean do a big seam allowance bigger than a 1/2 inch. It just means to be aware that it's not less. If you accidentally go bigger, then you're going to start affecting the size of your garment, so you don't want to do that. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to place your zipper, and make sure when you do this that the end that is the tight stitch, the shorter stitch, is the end of the zipper, because sometimes if you get turned around, you forget what you're doing. Just make sure that the basting is where the zipper is actually being applied. So you're going to place your zipper and center those teeth face down over your seam allowance. And for this, I'm gonna leave my tails here all the way up to the top, because I wanna make sure that this is going to technically be seam allowance if this were a garment. And so this is actually where you would need to sew. So if you put your zipper all the way at the top, you're gonna have a problem. So you wanna make sure that for the sample, I don't care as much, but it's good practice. So you're gonna wanna leave that seam allowance there. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pin this zipper just to the seam allowance, not to the whole garment. And I'm making sure that my teeth, again, are centered right over that seam. And what should happen is that your 1/2 inch seam allowance should line up pretty directly with that tape, because the tape really is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now, it doesn't matter which side you do first on the centered zipper. And let's see, do they make you do? They don't. Oh, they hand baste that. Okay. There's a lot of hand basting with zippers. For this one, you can just go ahead and baste. Actually, I'm going to this side. You can go ahead and baste with the machine instead, so you don't have to worry too much about hand basting this down, or at least just follow this. When we do the other ones, you'll see that we'll need to actually hand baste them in. So I'm going to start all the way at the bottom here. I'm going to change my zipper foot. Change to my zipper foot, and make sure when you change your foot that you put it the right way. So I'm going to go this way from the bottom to the top for this one, and so I want to make sure that my foot is on the correct side, so that my needle is closest to my tape, or to my zipper teeth rather, sorry. Now I'm going to do the basting right down the center, and the basting is just going to kind of hold it in place. So I can take out my needles. Now, as I approach this zipper pull, if I try to sew over this, it's gonna move my my needle away, because even with this foot here, it's gonna kind of push things away, and I don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to actually lift up this side, lift up my foot, make sure my needle is down so it doesn't move, lift up my foot and actually slide this down so it's out of the way. Put my foot back down, and then I can go to the end of that. I just did a small back stitch to kind of solidify it, okay? Let's see how I'm gonna then baste my other side. And this is where you would switch your zipper feet. I'm gonna just cheat a little bit. Just to expedite this. And again, as I approach my zipper pull, I want to make sure I put my needle in and foot up. And again, you're sewing this right now just to your seam allowance. This is not going through your garment. So your garment should look like nothing has happened at all, right? Okay, so now what we can do is we're going to hand baste where we want to stitch our top stitching. Now, this is more of a guide for you to follow so that you know where your stitching is going to be. If you think you can eyeball it, eventually you're able to do that, but I would suggest as a beginner that you actually try and hand baste this. And we're actually going to open this seam up so that we can move the zipper, so it would behoove you to try to hand baste it. I used to skip the hand basting with zippers a lot when I was in school, and as a teacher now I realize, I realize why they ask you to do that, and it really does make your life easier, even though it is sort of feels like an unnecessary or an added step, and it takes a few minutes, and it's not just using the machine. Now remember, hand basting are big stitches. I don't mind if these are big. You're going to pull these out, so I usually can tell whether you did this or not, but I won't be able to actually for sure tell. But this again is more for your technique. So you can make these really big. You don't want them to be like too big, but about, I don't know, 1/2 inch each. And basting can just be with the one. You're not really going to back stitch. You don't need to knot this or anything. It's just a guide. And this is going to be, again, a 1/4 of an inch top stitch on either side. So you're just basting all the way down, 1/4 of an inch on either side of that seam. And you're going through all of the layers. So on this side, you're actually going through the zipper tape as well as the seam allowance and the actual garment, okay? And you're going to go all the way down to the very bottom of the zipper tape, zipper where it ends, where that stopper is, or at least where you want your zipper to stop. So you can refer to where your basting stopped. Your machine basting stopped, and that's where you can cut across. So mine stopped right there. So now I'm going to go to this side and baste up the other side 1/4 of an inch. And this is going to be my guideline for that stitching, and it's at the same time holding down all of those layers so that I don't have to pin, and that everything will, once I sew over it, will all be solidified in one piece, and then all I have to do is take out all of my basting stitches. So there's the machine basting and there's the hand basting, and we'll pull both of those out as soon as I'm finished actually stitching that. And again, you're going to use your zipper foot and just make sure that you follow along these lines using whichever zipper foot seems correct. Now, once you're basted and before you actually start to sew, the one thing you're going to want to do is actually take out your machine basting, because we're going to want to use the zipper. We're going to want to use the zipper to open it up a little bit. I've lost all my seam rippers, so I have to use scissors. If you use scissors, be careful not to cut into your garment. So you're going to want to move this down because it's going to be really hard to sew over this if that stopper is all the way at the top. So using my zipper foot and starting wherever, whatever side you would, doesn't matter to me which side you start on, as long as you can stay on the line and use your zipper foot accordingly. Again, that zipper foot you'd want to be on the side of the garment and not on the side of the zipper. So make sure you're back on your number 2.5 stitch length, back stitch at the top. And you're just going to follow that basting stitch all the way down. When you get to where it turns, you're going to turn it. Now be careful, you might want to walk it across here, because when you go over that zipper, it can sometimes pop, even with especially with a metal zipper, but even with a plastic zipper. And if you go all the way down at your stopper, the metal stopper will also break your needle, and that really kind of sucks. So don't try and be careful about that. Again, following that basting stitch, when you get to your zipper pull, you can pull it up or down, doesn't matter at this point. Just get it out of the way. Again, that's putting the needle in and the foot up. back stitch at the top. And the other purpose for sort of basting it in is so that you can double check and make sure that everything is lying flat. A lot of things that can happen with your zipper, inserting your zippers, is sometimes they can get sort of off a little, and that'll create a twisting. So you really do want to make sure that you baste your zippers and double check your placement of the zipper. And so that is your center zipper. That's pretty much it. So you can actually stop the